Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog with Riot Mort. It is 5:30 a.m. on Friday. Friday of a 3-day weekend. Kind of looking forward to it. Should be nice. So, let's see. Yesterday, I was bad. I had ice cream. But you know what? It was my birthday. I wanted ice cream. Also gave my daughter, I took my daughter with me, and so we got some good talking time trying to do that parenting thing where I'm like, what are you going to do when you graduate high school? Kids have it a lot harder. When I was growing up, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I had like 3 jobs. It was like game designer, math teacher, or card shop owner were the 3 things I knew I wanted to do. And so like I had a very clear okay. And I was smart enough that it was like, well, you're definitely going to college and you've got, so now it's just like figure out what college you want to go to. But nowadays it's like, if you don't have that clear path of what to do, combined with the fact that, I don't know that college is as much of a value proposition as it was 25 years ago. So I don't know. We're going to have to figure that one out. Thankfully, I'm in an okay enough spot that if she has to live at home for a little bit and figure things out, we'll be fine. But at the same time, man, it's scary for kids growing up. If you're watching this and you're somehow between the ages of 17 and 19, I get it, man. I get it that the times are different and jobs are hard and AI is a thing. Because we were even talking oh, what'd be cool for her to do would be like some art stuff or some video editing. Now, man, AI is going to make that pretty tough. So it's a weird world, man. Let's see. Today also, I've been mostly off of things like Twitter and Reddit, but today I actually have to make a Twitter post this morning in about an hour. So we're reworking Ginsu's next patch. And obviously that's got some people it's interesting. I think enough people have been watching me over the years, and we've kind of talked about it, that a lot of people get it. And a lot of people are like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But a lot of other people are like, Ginsu's, that's one of the core things of TFT. It's my favorite thing. They're ruining the game. And, we've even seen some social media posts in various regions that are like, when they rework Ginsu's, I'm quitting the game. Which, to be fair, you see that on every change, right? It's like now the social media outrage is always the play, but, still want to make sure that we're like, look, guys, we get it. And so I actually made a video for our China region so that they could publish it. I just quickly made it. It's like a 7-minute video where I compare new and old Ginsu's on various champions in this set. And so I'm going to be releasing that. At this point, you've probably already watched it, because that might go live before this goes live, considering I have to do all the uploading on this one, and that one's already ready. But with a Twitter post with it, and so, but the thing I'm going to do differently this time is I'm going to post it, and I'm not going to look at any of the replies on Twitter or the YouTube comments or anything. I'm just going to be like, there it is, have fun, because there will be some smart ass that's like, well, you built this item instead of this item, and that's going to even though it makes no difference, so I don't want to get into those bad actor arguments. So I'm going to post it and ignore it. But, considering I haven't posted anything in 3 weeks, it'll be a surprise. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But again, the thing is, it's like, look, at the end of the day, the reason I'm posting it is because it's like, we want you guys to know that we take it seriously, that yeah, Ginsu's is fun, and we want to keep it fun, which is why we're not shipping a boring, bad item, So, yeah. Anyway, but at least it's a 3-day weekend, so, yeah. All right, questions today. All right, the first one's a fun one. Could there be an augment tier higher than Prismatic? Right? We'll call them rainbow tier. We'll go Chrono Trigger. We'll go rainbow. So the answer is that this comes up, I'd say once or twice a year internally on the team, where it's like, oh yeah, that'd be cool. Let's have like ultra prismatics or whatever. Because it's like a natural thing. It's like you always want to one up yourself, right? Whenever you're designing something, you're like, okay, but what if the better thing, right? I always laugh because Final Fantasy had 999 damage, and then it had 9999 damage, and then it had 5-digit nines. You know, you always gotta one up yourself. But the problem is, and there's a couple problems. The first one is that I don't think we would ship a like ultra prismatic tier, rainbow tier. We'll call it rainbow tier. I don't think we ship a rainbow tier unless it had a key purpose. It can't just be more of the same. So what I mean by that is like hedge fund, right? Hedge fund is gain 25 gold. Would I make an ultra prismatic that was like ultra hedge fund and you gain 40 gold? Not really. A lot of gold is a lot of gold, right? And so having a lot of gold isn't really changing the game much or doing anything interesting. It's still just a lot of gold. And so I like, unless it drastically changed the gameplay in an interesting way, all it does is make the normal prismatic feel lame by comparison, right? You're not having rainbow buried treasures get 10 components. Boring, right? If we were going to do a rainbow tier, it would need to be stuff that like transformatively changes the way you play the game. So an example of this is like birthday present, right? Birthday present pretty dramatically changes the game. Or wise spending pre-nerf, right? Like stuff that really change. Like if you told me pirates was an ultra prismatic or a rainbow, I got mixing those up. I'd be like, okay, that I could kind of see that, right? And so that limits the design space a little bit. And, you know, using pirates as the example, would we really want pirates to be even less accessible because it's only in this rainbow tier? Or why not just make the prismatic version that's like accessible and people can play with it, you know? The other thing, and this is sort of a psychological thing, is that 3 choices is often the most people can handle at any given moment, especially when time pressure is on. And there's like a marketing thing, and I want to give you an example, hilariously enough. If you look at like Hextech chest bundles, and I bring this up because I know this from when I worked on the loot system. If you look at Hextech chest bundles, there's 1 Hextech chest, 5, and 10, right? There's the low, the medium, and the big bundle. And there's I forget the exact marketing term. Someone on like Brendan would know this better than I would. But basically, it's anchoring. That's what it is. It's like the 5 existing makes the 10 look like a good value. And so for people who are going to spend a lot, the 10 is like the attractive option. And for people who are going to spend a little, the 1 is the good option. And the 5 is the anchor. And like, not many people buy the 5-pack, but it's there to exist as that anchor. Augments are similar. Gold is the anchor. Gold creates the standard. It's like, this is what an augment is. Silver looks sad in comparison, and prismatic looks better in comparison, right? It's like an exciting thing is that prismatic augment. Having another tier puts us in a situation where psychologically what will happen is people will go, rainbow games are now the ones I'm excited about. Prismatics are just like lame rainbow ones. And so that's why you don't often see like 4 or 5 different types of bundles. So that also has a negative effect. So without a really, really good execution on what the design of these rainbow augments are, I probably wouldn't allow them to be shipped. So we need to have the right purpose. Oh, that's the other thing. When do they appear? And this, when they appear, is also another tough one, because if a rainbow augment appears on 2-1, challenger players get mad because it's like, this has completely shifted the game. We talk about how having things that are too transformative change your core understanding of the game. Something like a rainbow tier augment on 2-1, I mean, they already complain about prismatics, so that'll get elevated. But also on 4-2, then it's like too much of a Again, I'm probably just indexing a little bit on challenger players complain. Probably don't even need to finish the statement. But yeah, it would need to have a really good execution on what a rainbow augment is. What does it do? Why am I interested to get it? How does it not ruin the perspective of prismatics? So, not saying it's impossible. And again, I'm admitting we've internally talked about it numerous times. But that would be the big limiter here, is something like that. So, you know, if you're feeling fun, I think Teru was the one who asked this question, but, you know, try to write down what a rainbow augment would be. But again, you can't just do the more of a prismatic. So, like, you'd almost want it to be like a game mode, actually. Now that I'm brainstorming, it's like, okay, we have a game mode where there's these rainbow augments, and a rainbow augment is start at level 7. Because, like, that's going to change the way you play the game. But I would never ship that in, like, a competitive ranked meta. But it could be fun. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people ask this question, is it's like, again, that natural order of escalation creates a fun thing to chase after. So, yeah. All right. I think that's it for rainbow augments. Oh, this one was tough. Okay. It shouldn't be tough, but it is for me. Design problems you are proud of solving in the past. So the reason this is tough is not that I haven't designed a lot of, or haven't solved a lot of problems. In fact, if anything, it's too many. But as I've talked about before on these walks, I don't dwell too much on the past. I'm always looking forward. And so trying to remember while I'm on one of these walks of like, what have I done? Oh, right. You know, that's the thing I actually struggle with. And so what I would actually have to do is kind of like sit through and go like set by set of like, what have we solved? For example, you know, when items were not equal amongst, like if you go all the way back to set 1, our loot distribution system was terrible. I forget which player it was. I want to say kiting. Oh no, it was Nature's. It was Nature's. Set 1, he had the screenshot where he'd already high rolled his perfect Draven items on 2-1 because he'd already gotten 6 item orbs from the first stage, and they were all the exact items you needed for best in slot Draven on 2-1. Meanwhile, other players on his team, like, because orbs were not evenly distributed back then, there were other people in the game that only had like 1 item. And it's like, oh my God. And so coming up with like the loot orb system with Linda was a really, really big accomplishment, especially because at the time, people around me were like, that seems like a bad system, but actually ended up being good. And then when we normalized it again, that made it even better. I will say we're going to take another crack at it probably, given some of the response of this patch and where we're at post-hacks. I see a couple places we could make it even better. So I'm probably going to do that next month. So that's one example. I'll give you 2 more examples of ones I'm always really, really proud of. I've told this story before, but in set 3.5, we were shipping 1 galaxy per patch. It was like every patch there would be a new galaxy to play with. Pretty cool. Well, we got down to the final patch, and it's like, well, we need a galaxy. And all of our product managers were going, we don't have time. Everyone needs to be all hands on set 4, or set 4 is never going to get out the door. We just do not have the time or support to make a new galaxy. You know, your designers have to be working on set 4. There's just no way. It's impossible. Players are not going to get a new Galaxy for the final patch. And I went, now wait a minute. That's not good. It's the last patch. We gotta end on a high note. We can't just do nothing. And so I've always told my designers that, like, the best designers design within constraints. It's easy to go, here's my wild and crazy idea. It's much harder to go, here's my wild and crazy idea that we can execute in 10 minutes. And so in that particular moment of brilliance of mine, what I said was, okay, wait a minute. Let's look at all the galaxies we do have. The coding for them's all done. Let's pick these 3 players really, really love. And I forget exactly which ones they were, but there were 3 that players really loved. And I went, hey, Brian, B-Salve, how long would it take you to just combine these 3? The code's already there. It's just do all 3 of these. And he went, oh, like 10 minutes. I went, great, let's do that. And that became the Big Bang Galaxy, which was widely revered, and players loved it as a finale. It felt like the perfect end to 3.5. And, to some extent, laid the groundwork for us understanding the audience that really loves things like Chonk's Treasure, where, yeah, if you crank that dial, people love it. So that was a really good example of a design problem where it was like, players almost got nothing, little quick thinking, and we did basically no work, and you guys got something awesome. The last one, and this one's a little bit tougher. I don't think we've ever told this story, but Dragonlands. Dragonlands, Julie and Whitty were working on that set. We were pretty far into it. I want to say 50-60% of the way through the time that we had. And we were looking at the set, and it was fine. It wasn't great or anything, but it was fine. But one of the big problems was that there were 2 dragons in the set. 2. And there was no trait called dragons. We had a slightly different mechanic at the time that also wasn't landing great. I think it was the dragon eggs. But, you know, and we started getting feedback from people like our executive producer, Jeff, that's like, for a set called Dragonlands, there aren't many dragons. That feels weird. Mort, you need to get in there and make Dragonlands feel a little bit more like a Dragonlands set. Now, the problem here, again, we talk about constraints, is League of Legends does not have many dragons. They have Shyvana, and they have Aesol. Oh, and then they have the dragons in the actual, you know, the dragon pit. But the dragons in the dragon pit have, like, no animations. They can, like, basic auto attack, you know? So it was sort of like, well, crap. And they all look the same. So we kind of struggled for a little bit. And eventually what we got to was, well, again, design within constraints. We have Shyvana, we have Aesol, and I think it was Whitty who was like, this Galio skin kind of looks like a dragon. And so what we ended up coming up with was like, well, what if we just start taking like all the skins? And so like we'd started with just Shyvana, and it was like, how many Shyvanas can we put in the set? And they could be like a family of dragons. It was like, well, like 4 or 5. There were like 4 or 5 Shyvanas that we were kind of comfortable with. And then Whitty kind of took what he had learned from Lux in set 2 and was like, hey, what if like every major vertical origin had a dragon? And then we were looking and it's like, well, we could grab like Aurelian Soul, we can grab this Galio and start making. And so I think we ended up with like 7 dragons for those major verticals. And we ended up with, you know, green Galio and black Shyvana and gold Shyvana and red Shyvana and oh yeah, white Galio. And yeah. And the good news is, you know, I know for a lot of people, Dragonlands isn't necessarily their favorite set, and 8.0 or 7.0 had some balance issues. But what it did do is it did make players feel like it was a dragon set. And to this day, a lot of the casuals who their first set was Dragonlands, because they like dragons, we got a lot of players who like that set. And, you know, I think it's one of the most requested revivals right now is because dragons are cool. And it's funny because if we ever revisited it now, I think now we actually have the resources to like make dragons. Sohm was in 7.5, and Sohm was like, as we get ready for the mid set, we'll make a new dragon. And that also worked out pretty well. So, oh yeah, and then we also made Namzi. Namzi was a good dragon. And then I forget what we called Pled's Mount. But that one was all, people also liked that one. So in the end, we ended up making our own dragons and it felt pretty good. So I think that was another example of a design problem that like we kind of solved. It wasn't a systems or mechanics design problem, but it was a thematic and organization problem. And so I've probably got countless stories like this. I'm not going to sit here and bore you with every single thing I've jumped in and helped with. But that's kind of my job, is actually like, hey, something's in development and they've run into a wall. Get Mort in there and we'll break through that wall. That's what I do. Or sometimes it's, we have no one else, everyone else is busy, but we need to solve this problem. Throw Mort at it. An example of that is Double Up. Double Up recently was another thing where it was like, we don't really have anyone to work on Double Up, but car coming. We don't have anyone to really work on Double Up, but we'd like to get Double Up out of workshop. What would that take? And what does that mean? And so I had pitched a bunch of things, including like the friendship cannon so that people could share items again. One of the things I pitched that we ended up not shipping was I had an idea where at the end of each stage, so like 2-7, you would do what was called the team battle, where you and your buddy's board would come together for one round. During planning, you would each be able to set up your board during planning and possibly even combine the traits of those boards and then fight somebody else's in a like instant 2v2 like match. And what we ran into with that idea was like, well, getting it to all work and implemented with our logic was like incredibly costly. It would have taken a long time to get everything right, just because the complexities of like how an army is set up and then trying to merge those armies would have been a lot. And so then I created some like fake examples of like, here's two armies coming together and what it would look like. And I made the videos and we watched them and it was like, not that interesting. It was like, I mean, yeah, they're fighting, but like, okay. And if you're playing a comp that doesn't have much AoE, you're at a disadvantage. Early game fights are like really slow though. So the cost didn't seem worth the benefit. And we cut that particular idea. But again, that's kind of my job, is go where I'm needed and solve what I do. So hopefully those were some satisfying examples. But I'm sure if you keep asking about certain sets or whatever, I'm sure we could dig deeper into my brain. All right, I've taken a long time on these two questions. I'm going to do this really easy one. Someone said, Mortdog is a dog. What animal would you be if you're not a dog? Weird question. But from a like purely like what animals do I like perspective, dragon jumps out at number one. I think dragons are sick. I had a phase where I was like 10 to 15 where I collected little dragon statues. I still have two of the dragon glasses that I got. When I say glasses, I mean like a cup, like tall vertical drinking glass. So like dragons are cool, but Mort Dragon doesn't have the same ring to it. That's weird. I don't know. Nothing sounds as good as Mortdog. Mort Horse. Mort Horse. So yeah, I don't know. It's funny because as far as animals I like, again, like cat, but Mort cat, Meow meow, meow Mort. think we already have a meow meow in our community right now. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just a Mortdog eat dog world. What are you gonna do? So, not the most satisfying answer, I know, but if you ever want to picture me being a dragon, I think it was the movie Starsky and Hutch, was it? Where they're like, we're gonna do something weird. It's gonna involve 2 dragons. I always think of that movie when someone's like, would you be a dragon? It's like, it's weird. All right, last question that's an actual real question. Are there units or traits or augments or anything like that you're sad that didn't end up seeing play? So this is another example where I'm going to struggle to think of all the examples in the past, but I'm going to give you a framework here that I've kind of learned over the last few sets. When I say last few sets, I mean like 9 to 13. Is that if something isn't working, right? Maybe there's just like a common thing you'll see. I think the best example of this was 13 Sorks, where people are just like, this comp cannot work. There is not enough frontline. You carry too many crappy 1-cost units in your comp. There is no way this comp will ever be viable. It's just bad trait design. That's false. Anytime someone writes something like that, I need you to understand they're just wrong. They're just wrong because, as we quickly proved in that patch, I cranked the number of 8 Sork. I think it was like 120 to 150 or something. Some big crank. It was a big ass buff. And all of a sudden it was meta. And it was meta and it worked just fine. And the reason I bring this up is that anytime something doesn't work, I don't blame the set designers who put it together. I blame the balance for not getting the number right. Because yes, you could argue that like you shouldn't design a comp that has only 1 tank centered around it. But if you do that with intentionality, there is some number that will make it function. There is, right? I think an example right now on live is like, Techie really hasn't seen much play. Does that mean Techie is flawed? I don't think so. And so I think next patch Techie's getting another small buff. And because we know Brand is strong, like Brand's not the issue. Brand is clearly doing well with, Street Demon. So the question is, how much power do we have to put in Techie where Brand would consider that option, Or is it, there's not enough power in Seraphine and Zyra so that you can go the reroll Techie version, right? Like, all this is just balance needs to be put right. And so going back to your question of like, is there anything that hasn't worked out? I think if we went back and reviewed each set, we could probably find a few champions where we're like, nope, that 2-cost never really saw play as a dominant comp. But the solution is just, all that means is at some point, balance didn't get around to it and go, that number needs to be higher. It's also, like, I talked about this yesterday, but it's why I think, like, player-made tier lists are kind of lame, because all it is, was it powerful enough? And so... Hey, folks. I'm dubbing this over after the fact, so if my mouth doesn't match what I'm saying here, it's because for whatever reason, my struggle with technology continues and the audio cut out, which is really annoying. So apologies, but I'm going to try to fill this in as I sit at my desk, panicking, but filling this in and trying to make sure I cover this. That being said, a lot of what I was kind of wrapping up on here was just that a lot of our assessment of like what worked and what didn't from a player perspective comes down to power. It doesn't necessarily come down to like the design flaw. And if anything, over the last few sets, we've learned that if you just buff something enough, eventually it can work. And so anything in the past that we might look at and sort of go, it hasn't worked or it didn't work, is really just a failure of, balance to get it up there and give it the numbers it needed to support it. And so generally, if anyone talks about a comp, having a flawed design, we've learned over time that you can budget enough power to make it worth it, right? To jump through the hoop, to give the power to make that work. And so that's a lot of what I was talking about at this point. I forget the exact thoughts I had because, you know, it's hard to remember exactly what you said. But generally, that's what I look at. And so, you know, I'd have to go back and look through different sets. But, you know, let's say you picked like set 11 Janna and you're like, oh, set 11 Janna never really worked. Well, really all that means is somebody probably should have buffed the damage or the mana or the attack speed of Janna enough to get Janna to work, right? And so there's nothing that I look at in that regard, or I don't blame players for going, you know, this didn't work or anything like that, at least on the champs and trait side. Now, augments are a little different. Augments, you know, if you create something that's too narrow to play with, that can be a big challenge. And so if anything, those augments we end up just cutting, right? I think an example of this is like diversified portfolio, right? Where it's like we tried to buff it and ended up being way too strong. So at its balanced numbers, but at its balanced numbers, it's like way too narrow and only playable on a few specific comps. So that just ends up sort of being flawed design. And yeah, I see what you mean, by the way, of watching these videos. I'm sitting here watching myself talking, trying to kind of dub it over. And they're like, it bobs a little more than I think I'd like. That's unfortunate. I wonder if there's a better way to make this work. Anyway, so that's kind of what I talked about. Hopefully that kind of answers the question about, you know, is there anything that we really, you know, don't think worked? And, you know, not really. You know, for example, Hydro, this person was asking about, you know, backline Elise. And backline Elise is another example where it was like, there was some power level where eventually backline Elise was going to be turbo meta, right? Like, we kept buffing it, and, you know, by the end it was. But again, all that is a failure of design to go in there and crank the numbers. And part of that is because of the fear. Like, for example, when we first launched set 13, we saw Elise be really strong, but it wasn't because of Elise. It was because Black Rose had the Scion at 5 Black Rose had that thing where if Scion damaged them, they took like 20% more damage. And so when we nerfed that, that actually hurt Elise pretty heavily. And we never gave Elise those like proper compensation buffs until way too late. Other things that can affect that meta can be like if there's a certain super tank that Elise's spiders struggle to get by, that is a big challenge as well. And so we just have to make sure that works. So, yeah. And this is where I started wrapping it up, because at this point I'm walking uphill and I'm panting and I'm like, God, you know, which is always fun. But yeah, started talking about the fact that I have this Ginsu's video, which now at this point is out and is published as I record this. And what else did I say? Oh yeah, I made a cute thing about how these videos will only be Monday through Friday. So a reminder that there's no videos coming out, you know, this weekend. But then I was coyly like, but maybe I should do something else this weekend to fill that gap, since I'm not doing those videos. Hint, hint, wink, wink. And yeah, and then talking about how it's Friday and it's really, really good and things like that. And now I get to, like, I don't know why the mic turned off. I checked, by the way, when I got home. It had batteries. It wasn't like out of batteries. It just, maybe I yapped too long. Maybe it has like a 40-minute timer. I don't know. So that was definitely frustrating. But hopefully this at least fills the void as you go. I've got 1 minute left. What can I talk about for a minute? Oh yeah, the Ginsu's video's out. Riot did the official ones, which initial reactions didn't look positive. People were like, because like they opened up with Vayne, which is like one of the worst cases. But hopefully that video helps. And yeah, so also, man, you can see that cat hair on this video too, all over the hoodie. So yeah, all right. Well, again, hopefully this turns out and at least fills the audio, and hopefully this doesn't happen again. Someday I just need to like have somebody do my tech for me, you know. But okay, well, there you go. I filled in the 6 minutes. Hopefully you appreciate this extra effort. All right, that's gonna do it for me. I'm wrapping up here. I'm gonna make faces. My fingers will come up soon. Until next time, take it. Wait, he's not. There we go. He's until blah blah blah. God, this guy doesn't wrap it up. Until next time, take it easy.